Goblin launch detected.
Hey gang, and welcome back. Just so you know, you can use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, one word, at FlipsideGaming.com to get 10% off orders $10 or more. You can also use the promo code at Original Magic Art on everything except for paintings. And finally, you can use the code at mtg.multizone.ca to get 10% off of your orders of singles. Using the code will help you save some money and help out the channel at the same time. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is another double feature. That means you get 2 games for the price of 1. First up, we have the rad Roxy playing her ginormous Ghalta deck, keeping 2 forests, Soul's Majesty, Court of Calling, Vizier of the Menagerie, Priest of Titania, and an Elvish Mystic. The ever-elusive Eric is playing his Vaevictus deck, and his opener consists of Dragon Broodmother, Blood Crypt, Polluted Delta, Swamp, Possessed Portal, Cold Steel Heart, and Butcher of Malakir. Josh is playing the awesome Atraxa, keeping a Glacial Fortress, Simic Signet, Brainstorm, Wooded Bastion, Corpsejack Menace, Drowned Catacomb, and an Isolated Chapel. Hail to the Queen, it's Matt playing his Empress Galina deck, and he keeps 4 islands, Scavenger Grounds, Dig Through Time, and a Hedron Archive. Eric wins the die roll and starts us off. Eric plays a tap Blood Crypt, passing. Josh plays a tap Glacial Fortress and passes to Matt. Matt plays an island and passes. Roxy plays her forest and casts an Elvish Mystic. Eric plays a swamp and casts Cold Steel Heart, choosing green as it enters. Josh plays a Wooded Bastion and casts a Simic Signet. Matt plays an island and passes. Roxy plays a forest and casts Priest of Titania. She then passes to Eric. Eric plays a Polluted Delta and then pays 2 for Bitter Blossom. Josh casts Brainstorm in his main phase, drawing 3 and putting 2 back. He plays a Plains for his turn and passes. Matt plays a Scavenger Ground and passes. At the end of turn, Eric cracks his Delta to go and find a Badlands. Roxy drops a forest and casts Gyre Sage by tapping the Priest, and then taps the rest of her lands and the Mystic to help cast Vizier of the Menagerie. She looks at her top card and passes. Eric loses 1 in his upkeep, gaining a fairy token. He plays a forest and then pays enough for a Siege Gang commander, gaining some goblin tokens as it enters, and passes. Josh plays an Isolated Chapel and pays enough to bring out Atraxa. Matt draws and plays an island, and then he taps 4 to cast Washout. He names green to bounce all those permanents back to their owner's hands, and he then passes turn. Roxy casts Fyndhorn Elves, and then recasts her Priest, and passes to Eric. Eric loses another 1 on the upkeep for a fairy, and then drops a Taiga in his main phase. He casts Dragon Broodmother in his main phase, and heading to combat, hits Roxy for 1 with a fairy. Eric gains a dragon token on Josh's upkeep, and doesn't devour anything. Josh plays a Flooded Grove, and uses Mortify at sorcery speed to kill the Dragon Broodmother. He then passes to Matt. Matt draws and plays an island, and then pays 4 to cast Hedron Archive. Roxy recasts her Mystic and Gyre Sage in her main phase, and taps her Priest for 4, and then a land to make 5 mana. She uses it to cast Sylvan Library, and then Nace's Pilgrimage. She finds a land for the field and 1 for her hand, and plays the forest from her hand as her land for turn before passing to Eric. Eric loses 1 to gain a fairy token from Bitter Blossom, and in his main phase casts Liliana Vess. He downticks her to tutor for a card to put it on top of his library, and he passes to Josh. Josh recasts Atraxa in his main phase, and passes. Matt drops an island, and uses Control Magic to steal Atraxa from Josh. Matt then passes, and Eric asks if Matt wants to proliferate on Liliana, but surprisingly, Matt declines. Roxy uses her library trigger, but only draws the 1 card for turn. She recasts her Vizier in her main phase, and gives the Gyre Sage a +1/+1 counter from the evolve trigger. Roxy then has enough power and mana to cast Ghalta for only 5 mana, and this gives her Gyre Sage another counter before she passes to Eric. Eric loses 1 and gains a fairy on his upkeep. He casts Mana Crypt in his main phase, and moves to put Possessed Portal into play immediately after that. It hits the field, and Eric becomes public enemy number 1. He then upticks Liliana, making Matt discard a card, and moves to his end step. This has the portal put his trigger onto the stack, and everyone has to either discard a card or they'll be forced to sacrifice a permanent. Everyone decides to sacrifice something except for Josh, who discards a card from hand. Josh doesn't draw because of the portal, and plays a tap Drowned Catacombs. He asks the table that if he takes out the portal, that they deal with Eric first, and everyone agrees. This leads to Josh casting Putrefy to take it out, and he then graciously passes the turn. Matt draws and plays a Confiscate to steal Eric's Liliana Vess. He upticks her, forcing Eric to discard a card. Moving to combat, Matt then swings the stolen Atraxa at Eric as well. Eric blocks with 1 fairy, and Matt gains 4 life. Moving to his end step, Matt uses Atraxa's Proliferate trigger and upticks Liliana by 1. Roxy draws for turn and taps her Priest and Findhorn Elves for 5 mana. She uses this mana to pay for a Foily Soul's Majesty and draws 12 cards thanks to Ghalta. She drops a Forest for her land drop and floats 3 green with her remaining mana dorks. We then see a Great Oak Guardian hit the field, and she gets an Evolve trigger on her Gyre Sage, and then untaps her creatures and gives them +2/+2. She then uses that 3 floating mana from before to cast Staff of Domination, and makes 6 more mana. She uses this for a Chord of Calling, and tutors for a creature that costs 3. She grabs Sylvala, Heart of the Wilds, and puts her to the field. She then taps Gyre Sage for 3 to drop a Concordant Crossroads. And uses another 1 to activate Sylvala, who makes 12 green mana thanks to Ghalta. She can then untap Sylvala and make infinite green mana in conjunction with the staff. She then uses this to draw her library, and cast Palakranos, and then a Shaman of Forgotten Ways. She pays enough to make Palakranos enormously large and monstrous, killing all of her opponent's creatures. She's then able to activate the Shaman to make the table's life totals equal to the amount of creatures they control, killing all 3 of them at once. Round 2 features Ryan's Boros buddies Akiri and Bruse, and he keeps a Command Tower, Sacred Foundry, Darksteel Pendant, Coalition Relic, Swiftfoot Boots, and Duplicant. Mike is playing the opulent Olivia, keeping 3 swamps, a mountain, Jund Panorama, Void Winnower, and Animate Dead. We have the first of the Xenagos, Trevor, keeping a Kessig Wolfrun, Sylvan Library, Nisa's Pilgrimage, Mountain, and Triumph the Horde. His unofficial tag team partner Matt is also playing Xenagos, and he keeps a Reliquary Tower, 2 mountains, Sneak Attack, Carnage Tyrant, Spellbreaker Behemoth, and Lurking Predators. Matt wins the die roll and starts us off. Matt plays a Stomping Grounds and passes. Trevor plays a mountain, passing. Mike draws, but doesn't play a land, and moves to discard down to 7. He pitches a Void Winnower, and the table senses shenanigans are incoming. Ryan plays a tap Sacred Foundry, and passes to Matt. Matt plays a mountain, and passes. Trevor plays a Kessig Wolfrun, passing, showing Matt his wonderful hand of green and his lack of forests. Mike draws and plays Jund Panorama. Ryan plays a Great Furnace, and brings out Akiri. Matt plays a Reliquary Tower, and pays 2 for Survival of the Fittest before passing turn. Trevor draws a land, but sadly Reliquary Tower doesn't tap for green. Mike plays a Swamp, and drops Animate Dead. It resolves, and enchants the Void Winnower, and Mike then passes. Ryan plays a Guildmage's Forum, and casts Coalition Relic. He moves to combat, hitting Matt for 2 commander damage, and passes turn. Matt plays a mountain and uses Survival, pitching Tyrant's Familiar to go and find a creature, and passes. Trevor draws and has to pass. Mike draws for turn and plays a mountain, while Matt reveals Ilharg as the creature he found. Mike then pays 2 for Tormenting Voice, discarding Scourge of the Throne, and draws 2. Moving to combat, he hits Ryan with the Winnower for 10. At the end of turn, Ryan puts a counter on his relic. Ryan makes a white mana with his relic in his main phase and plays a command tower. He casts a Boros Cluestone and moves to combat. He hits Mike for 3 commander damage with Akiri and passes. Matt draws and can't even, so he passes. Trevor draws and plays his first green source, but unfortunately it's a tap Cinderglade. Mike plays a swamp for turn and swings the Winnower at Ryan again. Ryan has no choice but to take the hit, and Mike moves to his second main phase. He casts Necromancy and brings back the Scourge to the field. Matt uses this time to discard Spellbreaker Behemoth to the Survival and goes to find a Woodfall Primus. At the end of turn, Ryan cracks his Cluestone to draw a card, and taps his relic to put a charge counter on it. Ryan plays a Plains and remembers to remove his charge counter. He cycles Desert of the Fervent, drawing a card. Moving to combat, Akiri makes her way around the table and ends up heading at Trevor for 2. Matt draws and discards Carnage Tyrant to the Survival and tutors for another creature. He finds a Shaman of the Forgotten Ways and puts it to hand and passes. Trevor pays 3 for Canada's Reach, putting a forest onto the field and 1 to his hand. He then passes to Mike. Mike plays a Swamp and heads to combat. He swings the Winnower at Ryan and the Scourge at Trevor. The Scourge gets a Dethrone trigger, gaining a +1/+1 counter, and Trevor takes the hit for 6 while Ryan takes the hit from the Winnower. Mike then untaps his creatures and moves to his second combat step. Mike swings the Winnower once more at Ryan to take him out, and the Scourge this time heads towards Matt. Mike gets to add another counter to the Scourge, and Matt then takes 7. Matt draws and plays a Forest, and pays 5 to cast his legendary Boar God, Ilharg, before passing to Trevor. Trevor draws and plays a tap Spinerock Knoll. He casts Xenagos before resolving the Highway trigger to save some time, and passes to Mike. At the end of Trevor's turn, Mike cracks the Jund Panorama to find a basic. He grabs a mountain and starts his turn. Mike draws and moves to combat, dealing a modest 7 damage to Trevor with the Scourge. He pays 3 in his post-combat main phase for Feldon and passes to Matt. Matt draws, and before leaving the draw step, Mike uses Victim of the Night on Ilharg. Matt decides to put Ilharg 3rd from the top, and then drops a Shaman of the Forgotten Ways in his main phase. He then passes to Trevor. Trevor plays a Forest, and a mysterious water bottle appears. Trevor then casts Nisa's Pilgrimage to find 2 forests, and Matt uses Survival, pitching Blightsteel Colossus, shuffling it in while searching for a creature card. Mike draws and checks for any creatures in his yard. He finds none and has to cast Thundermaw Hellkite for its full cost. Who even does that? Moving to combat, Mike swings everything but Feldon at Trevor for 22 points of damage. Matt draws and casts his own Xenagos in his main phase. Moving to combat, he puts the Xenagos trigger on the Shaman and passes turn. Trevor draws and tries to find an out to not die on Mike's turn. He plays a Forest and then passes. Mike plays a Mountain for turn and taps it for a Soul Ring. Moving to combat, he swings the Winnower at Trevor and the Dragons at Matt. Trevor can't stop it and gets taken out, while Matt also takes the hit and loses 12 life. In his second main phase, Mike casts a DC Undead Vizier and exploits herself as she enters to tutor for a card. He passes to Matt while searching. Matt draws and pays 5 in his main phase to recast the Ilharg. Moving to combat, he puts the Xenagos trigger onto Ilharg and swings the Boar God at Mike. Resolving the Boar God's trigger, he gets to put a Woodfall Primus tapped and attacking, and it enters the battlefield and blows up Necromancy. Mike then takes 18 points of damage, and Matt then passes, but is pretty sure he's done on the swingback. Mike plays a Smoldering Marsh and pays to cast Soren Markov. He downticks the Walker to set Matt's life total to 10, and then activates Feldon to bring back the Scourge. Mike moves to combat and swings Xaxes at Matt to win. Game review time. So, as I usually do with these double features, I'm only going to discuss the winners. In the first game, it was an undisputed win for Roxy as soon as she was able to resolve the Palakranos and the Shaman. I like the fact that she didn't use just your typical Crater Hoof and flood the board with creatures win, and seeing a mono-green combo deck that doesn't win through combat is not something I usually see. I do think in this game that Josh might have wanted to save a piece or two of removal for later on, especially once the Possessed Portal was out. He was the only one who suffered not drawing a card that turn, and it might have been worthwhile going around at least until Eric's turn before destroying it. For the second game, as much as I love Mike's decks, unfortunately I would never have done what he did, especially when facing against the Xenagos. It did pay off for him, and there was an element of luck in the game, not to mention that Void Winnower shuts off a lot of very explosive and powerful cards in Xenagos and Akiri decks, but it was still a very risky keep. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.